Hi everybody, today I'm going to show you how to paint a picture like this, a tonal landscape. This picture was taken by Patrick Grant, who's on Instagram and Facebook and on the Sewing Bee. You may know him, but he's a photographer as well as all of his other talents. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you how to do a black and white tonal image, and then I will show you how to do, in the second tutorial I'll show you how to do the tonal version. Okay, so you need watercolour paper, paints, brushes, a little bit of masking tape, a couple of pots of water and a palette. Okay. Welcome back. This is the second tutorial of this section. The first one I did was the tonal value in Paynes grey, so just the black and white version, and this version we're going to do is the original image uploaded onto Instagram by Patrick Grant. So a beautiful image. It's looking out over the hills in Lancashire, and I just thought it's a great image to paint. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to apply some colour to the sky. Now with the sky, we've got a sort of almost like a cerulean blue or a cobalt blue even. I've got some here in my palette, and I've got a large round brush to apply it with. Okay, so I've got some clean water and I'm just going to wet this. You will have seen with the previous tutorial that we did a lot of the areas, the tonal areas of this landscape, in a method called wet in wet. So I'm just going to apply a layer, a thin layer of water just to the top. I measured my horizon 2/3 of the way up the page, which is a good place to, from a compositional point of view, to apply a horizon. And then I've got some already wet down cobalt blue here. I'm just going to apply it over the whole picture. And in the last tutorial, you'll remember, if you've seen it, that I was a bit disappointed with the sky because I didn't apply some darker pigment to the foreground area of the sky. So with this one I'm going to do that. So all I'm doing is I'm applying a thicker pigmented pool of paint just to the top, the very top of the sky, so it's darker. This is the foreground, the top here is the foreground, it's the closest bit of the sky to you, and it should be, in theory, it should be more heavily coloured rather than darker. It's just, there's more colour in it because your eye can see it because it's closer to you, and as the eye looks into the distance, the strength of that colour reduces. So it should be that it's lighter here and darker here, but that obviously changes according to what time of day it is and all sorts of things, but generally that's how it works. Okay, try not to get any water down there. Okay, so in that lower area though, we also have a little bit of purple, and all I'm doing is I'm going to pick up a little bit of alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson is the darker red in most sets of watercolour. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of alizarin crimson going up the page like this. I haven't mixed it, I've just put it directly on, but it's quite thin, so there's a lot of water in it. I'm just going to take a paper towel, I'm just going to dry off this area here because it's running down into my white area, so I don't want it to do that. So the difference between the Paynes grey black and white tonal image was that I've applied more pigment at the top, so it's darker, and I've added a little bit of alizarin crimson, which is your lighter, your darker red in your set, to that area there. Okay, now next thing we did was we started to lift off the clouds. Now, you can do it with a brush. I've got the same brush, and I can just lift strips off like that. And you can see this is drying out, so it's actually lifting off much better than the Paynes grey was. It's lifting off much neater lines. So again, lift off your larger areas with your larger brush, and then take a smaller brush to lift off more detailed parts of that. Just going to re-wet this because it's running down. Just let it run down. Okay. Again, wipe your brush off in clean water, dab it off on a paper towel like I'm doing here, each stroke, so that you're not rubbing that pigment in to your paper. Okay, the more you do it, the whiter it will go, but it really does depend on the resilience of your paper as to whether it starts coming up or not. If you've got cheap paper or thin paper, the paper tends to start getting a bit annoyed and will start coming up. So once that starts to happen, just stop doing it. Okay, mine is not doing it yet, so I'm going to carry on with some more detailed marks using a smaller brush. Okay, so just keep going until you're happy with what you've got with the marks that you're creating. And you can see that the marks stand out more on the darker pigment than they do on the lighter pigment. That's just the way it is. You know, white against dark blue will always stand out more than white against light blue. So just accept it for what it is. Okay, that'll do for now. Okay, so now I'm just going to dry that off quick. Okay, so now we move down to the lower areas, and we're going to pick up some more of the Cobalt Blue, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of ultramarine blue. So we've got Cobalt Blue or Cerulean Blue, whichever you want to use, and ultramarine. Okay, nice fine brush. Start at the top. Now I'm doing this slightly differently because I want to show you different methods of creating these sections. So I've put it on quite dark, and the area here is dry, and all I've done is I've washed my brush off, and I'm just going to apply damp brush to the underside. So this is a different way of doing it to the one we did in the tonal black and white version. You can do either method. It's really up to you which you enjoy doing the most. So just like I said, apply it, but it must be damp. Don't have soaking wet brushes. Damp and clean. Okay, there you go. That's that done. Next, we go in with the same pigment, just a little bit thicker. So when I say that, I just mean add a little bit more paint into it. And I'm going to put a touch of red in with it because, oops, we want it to be slightly warmer in colour. And when you add the alizarin crimson in, it tends to sort of warm up the pigment a bit more, and make it a bit purple in colour. I'm just adding a little bit more because it's not purple enough. So I've got ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, and I'm just putting, again, I'm just doing this wet on dry, which is different. I did the one previous, I did wet on wet, the Paynes Grey Tonal Black and White tutorial was wet in wet, using these painting these distant hills in. So again, wash your brush off, have it damp, not soaking wet, and just push that paint around in that area where it's supposed to be. But it must be lighter down the bottom than it is at the top. You can always go back in and darken this up if it's not dark enough, alright? And you don't necessarily have to dry those areas off either, because they're so thin, but I am going to. Mainly because I'm quite impatient. So we're going back in with the same pigment again. Just going to put a touch more red in it. Touch more red so it goes more purple. And then I've got a bit of hair on my brush there. Okay, so start at the top of the hill. Put your pigment down. A bit thicker pigment again. So just a touch more paint in your mix. And you've just got to hope that it doesn't run into the next section. Again, we want it to be lighter slightly, not so much with this one, but we do want it to be slightly lighter when it touches the next ridge, and that will help that next ridge stand out a bit more. So I'm just applying a little bit of water down the base of this range here. Now it's not dark enough, so I need to add more in. Alright, so I'm just going to put that along the top, and I'm going to let it run into that watery area there. Okay, and again, like I said, if it's not dark enough, you can always go back in and darken it up afterwards. There. Alright, dry it off. There we go. You see how much lighter it's gone? And then the final section would be the dark section. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take I've got my set here. I've got some of the pigment mixed here already. So that was the ultramarine and the alizarin crimson. You need quite a lot for this section. But into that, I'm going to put some Paynes Grey. So it's basically Paynes Grey mixed in with ultramarine and alizarin crimson, so it doesn't look so grey. Alright, as it dries you'll be able to see the colour just coming through and being richer in tone because you've mixed additional colours in with it. Okay, now on the previous tutorial I wet this area, but I just wanted to show you how to do it wet on dry and the difference in the result. Alright, so there we go. Now you can see it is still not dark enough, so I'm going to put another mix of ultramarine, Paynes Grey, alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to put a second coat down. You can do this when it's dry or when it's wet, it's up to you. And if you want to have like a what they call a gradated tonal value coming down this hill, then you can have it slightly lighter at the bottom or darker at the bottom or whatever, or you can have it just even all the way up, just nice even strokes from side to side. But I will say is if you are working on an angle like I'm doing, that will all bleed into one another anyway, so you don't really need to. Now I've got a little, I don't know whether that's a drip or whether it's, yeah it is. There's a little drip there where I've obviously flicked my brush and it's gone into my sky. Now I wouldn't touch that now. What I'll do is I'll wait for everything to dry off and then I'll go back in with a ultra clean brush and a paper towel and I'll just lift that off so that it's not there anymore. Okay, so let's dry Okay, more or less dry. I can see that I've got a hair here, hair here. You may know that quote or not from Withnail and I. Great quote. Here, hair here. So anyway, there's a hair here. Can't get it out without laughing. I couldn't see that because the pigment was so dark, but I will let that dry and try and pick it off. And if it leaves a mark, I'll just fill it in very carefully with a bit of paint. Okay, so don't worry about things like that. This little mark here, I haven't got any clean water on me, not ultra clean, but I'm just going to try and show you. So this is a damp, clean brush. Wet it. And then if you take a clean section of your paper towel, there it's gone. More or less gone anyway. Okay, so let's reveal. So you should do this when it's dry, and take your tape off really carefully. You get to see both of them being revealed at once. And if the paper starts coming off, then just lift the tape from the other side and that should solve it for you. Okay, this tape I've reused over and over again, so it's less tacky. A lot of people just get rid of the surface tack on their clothes just by tapping the tape onto the clothes first before they lay it down, and that prevents it from ripping your paper. Or you can buy what they call low tack tape. Okay, so there we have it. There's our two tonal value paintings, and you can see they feel completely different. This one's very sort of cold, even though Paynes Grey is quite a warm colour, and a lot of people like it because it's warm. It has a warmth in the sky especially. And then you move on to your blues and your reds and things, and it starts really warming up, and it gives you a completely different atmosphere. So have a go at both of them and then apply this technique to another image. There's loads of images online like this, and thanks to Patrick for this one. It's absolutely gorgeous, and also a photograph of the area where I grew up, so you know, I find it even more special. I used to ride my horses up on these hills and look out over the Irish Sea and towards Cumbria, Blackpool, Morecambe, and it's very evocative for me, so that's why I wanted to paint it. So enjoy, check his photographs out online. He's got some really beautiful ones, and like I said, have a go at both and then apply it. You might want to do a larger image in acrylic or a larger image in watercolour, or you know, just go for it. It's really nice, easy, quite meditative. The fact that you are not having to work with multiple colours really helps you concentrate on just getting the tonal values right. Okay, enjoy. See you again. Oh, if you like this video, click like. If you want to subscribe, click the button on the bottom right corner. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and my website is www.juliannesheridan.co.uk, and I've just recently done some work for the Botanic Gardens, the National Botanic Gardens of Wales, who also have some of my tutorials on their website, which are to do with painting flora and fauna and fungi and lichen and all sorts of things, but on their site, on their YouTube site, which is National Botanic Garden of Wales Grow the Future Project. Okay, cheerio!